getting close to the end of Peter Pan. If you remember, the pirates had captured the Lost Boys and Wendy. Chapter 13, Carried Off. Also, Hook had left some poison to make Peter sick in his cup of water while he slept. Peter slept for a long time. Finally, he was awakened by a soft rapping on the door of his tree. When he opened his eyes, it was still dark. He felt for his sword. "Who is it?" he asked. There was no answer, only a knock. "I said, who is it?" Still nothing, only silence. Peter was scared, but also excited. He loved adventures, especially ones that placed him in danger. His heart beat very fast. "I won't open it unless you speak," he said. "Let me in, Peter," the visitor finally said in a lovely bell-like voice. It was Tinkerbell. Peter quickly unlocked the door and she flew in. Her face was flushed and pretty dress stained with mud. Tinkerbell told Peter that Wendy and the boys had been captured and were now prisoners on the pirate ship. "I must save her," Peter cried, leaping for his weapons. But first, he would have a sip of water Wendy had left by his bed. Wendy left by his bed. His hand reached for the glass. "No," Tinkerbell cried, for she had heard Hook mutter about his trick as he sped through the forest. "It is poison." "What? By whom?" "Hook." "Don't be silly. How could Hook even get down here?" "I don't know, but he did." Peter Pan was stubborn and thirsty, so he raised the glass anyway. Tinkerbell flew quickly between his lips and the glass and took a sip of water instead. "Hey, that's my water," Peter protested. Tinkerbell did not answer. She was already spinning dizzily in the air. "Poisoned." "Tink?" Peter asked, suddenly afraid. "You should have listened to me," Tinkerbell said weakly. "Oh, Tink, why did you risk your life to save mine?" Peter asked. Her wings were weak, but she managed to land gracefully on Peter's shoulder and give his nose one last loving pinch. She whispered in his ear, "Because I love you, you silly donkey." Then she flew weakly back to her little cave and collapsed on her bed. Peter knelt near Tinkerbell's limp body in distress. His head almost filled her entire space of her room. Tink's light was growing darker. Peter knew she would die if her light went out entirely. "Oh, Tink," he cried, "what can I do? I need you. Please don't leave me now." "I think I could get well again if children believed in fairies," Tinkerbell gasped. But there were no children left in the cave. Peter stood up straight and screamed out, "To all the children in the universe, to all who might be dreaming about Neverland, boys and girls in their pajamas, safe in their beds, maybe even you. Do you believe?" he cried, and his question rang throughout the world. Tink sat up weakly in her bed and listened, straining her to hear her fate. She and Peter thought they heard voices, but they weren't sure. "If you believe," Peter tried next, "clap your hands. Don't let Tink die." This time they heard their answer. Many children clapping, a few naughty children hissing, but mostly they clapped. Until, that is, the clapping suddenly stopped, having been hushed by worried mothers who rushed into their bedrooms to find out what all the commotion was about. Nevertheless, that bit of clapping was enough. Tinkerbell was saved. Back to her old self, she didn't even think of thanking the children who had believed, although she did want revenge on the few who hissed. Here's a picture of Tink in her room, sick. If you believe in fairies, then clap. That will save them. "Now we must rescue Wendy," Peter vowed. Oh, if only that some clapping could work that magic as well. Yes, we must think of Wendy," Tinkerbell said glumly. It was a cloudy night, not good weather for flying, so Peter pressed forward on the ground. He could not help but notice that the island was strangely quiet, as though it were still in shock from the recent battle. As Peter walked, he looked for things the boys might have dropped. He had trained them, if ever taken, to leave such clues. Slightly, for example, was to cut trees, and Curly to drop seeds, and Wendy knew to drop her handkerchief. But he saw nothing. He swore a terrible oath. Hook or me this time. Chapter 14, The Pirate Ship.